My God, I got to control myself. Bring me down. Good morning. How's everyone doing? Good. I'm glad. First of all, John and Zeev and Landmark, thank you so much for pulling this thing together. And I've met a lot of my colleagues that it's the first time that many of us are here in Israel. I'm almost ashamed to say it, dealing in the way that I deal with so many places around the world. I've never been here. The second thing that has been absolutely incredible for me is I feel really at home here. And I've been trying to think why that would be the case. Well, I'm Cuban Chinese, and the Cuban culture, believe it or not, has a lot of similarities with the Israeli culture. Very warm, very family-oriented, likes to have fun, very entrepreneurial. The only difference is that I think your culture here is a little bit more direct than the Cuban culture. But let me tell you another reason why I feel kind of at home. I've been in New York for 45 years, which is also very direct. So you combine my New York culture and my Cuban culture. I'm Israeli. Feel very at home. So thank you so much again, and we're going to have a little bit of fun together. So I know everyone was out last night. I figured, how do we start this and have a little bit of fun? So the first thing I want to do is I want to ask you a question. The question I want to ask you is, what do you think is the greatest benefit of being a senior executive for a high-tech company? Anybody? Come on, take a guess. I'm going to make you work here. Gadgets for free. It's always a wonderful thing. Yeah, that's a good one. What else? Stock op. It used to be a really good thing. Not as much. Which? Save the world. What else? 401k. Boy, got to rely on 401ks now. Well, let me give you my opinion. They're all correct, and it depends on the company that you work for. But my opinion is really the web picture in a high-tech company. That's the greatest benefit. So let me give you an example. When I started Cisco back 20 years ago, and I started as the regional manager in New York City, this was the web picture that was on my web directory. As you can tell, not even a picture. So then I got promoted after that, and I became the Atlantic director in the New York area. And as you can see, bad hair, but now it's actually a photograph. Then I got promoted after that again. I became the vice president of Northeast. As you can see, we got a background now. Right? So again, better. Then I got promoted again. I became the group vice president of the United States, and that brought a lot of other benefits. As you can see now, Photoshop has been introduced. But nothing can prepare you for the greatest benefit of working for the chairman and CEO of Cisco, where you get to look like that on the directory. I made the mistake. I presented at a 5,000 or 6,000 woman conference, the Woman's Working Mother, in New York, and I jokingly said I look like that when I'm wet. And when I finished my talk, there was a line of about 200 women with water to see if it's true. So I just want to tell you, I do not look like that when I'm wet. So we'll clear that right away. So what do? I'm a very privileged role. Number one is to work for a large brand like Cisco opens up an incredible amount of opportunities. So I get to meet with a lot of very interesting people and do a lot of very kind of innovative things. On top of that, working for a powerhouse like our CEO, John Chambers, brings even more interesting things. So, what I've been thinking about over the last 5 years that I've been doing this job and talking to a lot of people is I'm actually concerned that a lot of the leaders that I get to talk to are not adapting as quickly as they should. And I'm fearful with a lot of the decisions that they're making, they're actually becoming obsolete. And we're going to talk a little bit more. So I've actually come up with this thing in my mind, which is how do you become a technowist? And a technowist is something I purely made up, which is nothing more than a set of philosophies and practices with the sole purpose of not being obsolete or becoming obsolete. So we're going to go through this a little bit because I want to go through that with you and share some of those ideas. And again, as I said to you, not becoming obsolete. And there's two principles here. One is to leverage the present, and the second piece is to simultaneously also prepare for the future. Kind of the yin and the yang of this thing. I got to throw some Chinese stuff in there, I guess. So what I want to do is two things with you. Number one, if I do this right, is I want to make you a little bit uncomfortable. I want to bring you to the edge, right? And when you're uncomfortable, it kind of is when you learn the most. The second thing I'd like to do is give you a different perspective. I'd like to kind of maybe have you look at the world a little bit differently. So if I achieve those two things, I am a very happy man. So I'm going to try. So let's kick this thing off. What I kind of called this talk was New World, New Rules, right? How to thrive, lead, and survive in this constantly changing world. So the agenda is going to be real quick. We're going to explore a couple of things, some of these forces to watch. So I have a question for you. Force number one is rate and speed of change. Who in this room thinks that the world is changing at a comfortable pace? Raise your hand. Anybody? There's normally one. And then everyone turns around and hisses at him or her. World is not moving at a slow pace. And I think sometimes we tend to forget how different things are. Just a couple of examples. I'm going to have you consider a couple things. This is not new information, but when you put it all together, it kind of gives you a little bit of anxiety. You know, look at the reliance on social networking today. I don't care what it is. It didn't exist 10 years ago, right? If you go 10 years before that, we didn't have the internet. First internet message wasn't sent until 1990, right? And look at the reliance we have both on internet technologies and also on social media. If you go a little bit further and you say, you know, if you work in web programming, online marketing, or any of the mobile phone industries, your businesses did not exist 20 years ago. We have one of these most incredible devices in our hands that, you know, we'd rather leave our wallet at home than our phone, and this device has only been around for 20 years, give or take, right? And as a matter of fact, I keep a reminder, my brick phone, I have my brick phone, and it lays right next to my nightstand, so every day when I wake up and I look at it, it reminds me of how quickly things are changing. The second force that I think it's important for us to understand is innovation cycle has changed. Innovation used to go from the university environment or a research center. It would go to a large company like Cisco, right? And, you know, a lot of technologies like laptops, networking, email, all of these are technologies that went through that evolutionary process. And then as consumers, if we were lucky, 10 to 15 years later, we would be able to use them. The cycle changed about 6 years ago. New technologies being developed, it's putting into the hands of our consumers, and a lot of these technologies that you see there on the right-hand side are all these things. What has happened is there's been a shift. We now, in the business world, are trying to find out, hey, how can we adopt? I mean, I remember at Cisco saying, I want to use my iPhone, and, you know, my IT people were going like, oh my God, you can't use an iPhone. Well, why not? Security and this and that. We're shifting everything, and this is really, really important. And the piece to understand is, in many ways, consumers have better tools than we have in the business world. So we have to adapt, and we have to understand that cycle. Force number three, people have power, unlike ever before in the history of mankind. And there's a whole bunch of examples for that, right? So here's a test. Who was Time Magazine's Person of the Year in 2006? Who remembers that? Who was it? The internet. It was you. It was me. It was all of us. Why? Because for the first time, we as humans had access to information. We were democratizing information. It shifted everything. I remember, you know, one of my daughters, unfortunately, had gotten sick, and she's doing well, but I remember going to the doctor and querying the doctor and saying, why are you doing this protocol? There's this option available. There's this new test that's available. Why are you doing that? And he's looking at me and goes, I don't even know what you're talking about. Right? And that has happened because of democratization. In 2010, who was Time Magazine's Person of the Year? Zuck. You got it. Mark Zuckerberg. So here's the interesting part. In a mere 4 years, from 2006 and 2010, we went from the power of the individual to the power of the we. The power of us as a collective to be able to do all sorts of different things. Right? And it's extremely powerful. Think of what's happened in the Arab Spring and all these other places around the world, where actually social media has played a very critical role in changing the world, right? And it doesn't stop there. If you're in business, in the United States, Bank of America, one of our largest banks, decides to start charging their users $5 for using their debit card. And what happened? There was a revolt. You know, everyone took to the web. All sorts of things start happening. This gal, 22-year-old gal, starts putting an online petition on change.org. And in a very short period of time, she's able to get hundreds of thousands of people to sign up and complain. And in a very short order, right, she's able to, in a very short order, she gets a call from the bank folks and says, look, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that, and they retract from doing it. People have power. And as a matter of fact, not only, it didn't stop there. There's now organizations called like Move Your Money and others that have been born as a result of the banks charging this. And there's hundreds of millions of dollars being moved away from Bank of America as a result of this. People have power. The other force is this new net generation, the digital ones, right? They're 100% digital all the time. This is the daughter of a friend of mine who's 21 months old, right? And as you can see her, they don't come with a training package. But here she is opening up an iPad, right? She's been able to search and do all these types of things. And by the way, just to give you a data point, the number one toy in affluent families in the United States for 4-year-olds and under is an iPad, right? Whether you like it or not, Apple has rearranged her iOS. Her operating system has been rebooted, right? And she's able to use this kind of thing. And you'll find her now the face of victory. You know, I had, my kids are a little bit big, but we were taking care of my great nieces. And they were in front of my TV, my big screen TV, doing all the gestures. Because every platform for them, no matter what the screen is interactive, right? And this is the world we're dealing with. They're totally different. And, you know, they're big. There's 80 million of them coming into the workforce. They're going to be our consumers. They're totally connected. They're a video generation, right? They are a unique bunch, right? I have 3 of these, so I can tell you. And the key with them is that they come infected with this new world, you know? And what I discover is in many ways, we'll take these incredible people, and when they join the workforce, we put them in a cube. We block their social media. We do all sorts of really silly things. Instead of harnessing the gifts that they bring to work, we actually crush them. So we have to pay attention to that. So what is the current environment, right, for when it comes to business and leadership? Well, I think we're at a turning point, right? Every business, every government, and society is undergoing a reboot simultaneously. We witnessed a reboot 12 years ago, and I remember when the music industry went through that reboot. And I remember sitting back and going, oh, those music industry guys don't want to change, right? And what did they do? They were suing 12-year-old kids in New York City. So the secret now is, as we're all getting rebooted, how are we going to react? Are we going to fight it, or are we going to kind of make it happen? Because it's going to happen whether you like it or not. And you can go industry by industry. I don't care what it is, the financial system. If you're in the newspaper industry, how long is that going to last? If you're in safety and security or do anything think about the technologies that are available today. You know, think of education. Those kids that I showed you, 21-month-old using an iPad, do you think they're going to sit and want to play with a piece of paper and learn in a traditional way? Their operating system has changed. So we have to change the way we do things. Every single one of these is going to change. We're working very actively with smart connected cities at Cisco, because there's mass urbanization that's taking place. There's hundreds of millions of people every year that are moving towards cities. Incredible opportunities. We have to do things differently. We have to do things more efficiently, right? Or we're not going to survive the tsunami that's coming. But everything's being rebooted. There was an interesting article in Fast Company. They said in 10 years, over 40% of the Fortune 500 will no longer be here. Whether it's 40%, 30, 20, I can tell you that it'll be a vast larger number than what we've been witnessing in the past. So just an example for you, and you know, I'm a very simple-minded guy, so when I throw out a concept, I like to bring it to the lowest common denominator. So I didn't want to do a tech company, so let me show you an example of something very basic. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the ice industry, but I want to give you an example of how something has changed. The ice industry actually started not far from me in Rockland County, New York. And they were harvesting ice from the lakes in the wintertime, and there was a factory that would cut the ice, and it would distribute it everywhere around the world. How we got to China, I don't know, but they used to ship to China, right? And this was a very vibrant industry for 50 years, from 1850 till 1900, when in 1900 someone came up with the great idea to build ice factories and do mass productions of ice in all the major cities. We had an ice person, an iceman that would deliver the ice. You had an ice box at home that you put the ice in. And by the way, this technology changed society forever, because the head of household, the women that would do the cooking and everything else, didn't have to go shopping every day. Now you could shop every 2 or 3 days. So it changed our culture. The environment changed. And this was an extremely vibrant business for 27 years. As a matter of fact, in 1920, the 9th largest investment, Ziv, was into the ice business. And then in 1927, right, someone invents the home refrigerator. So this is a really simple example. We have 77 years. We have 3 major shifts that have happened from a technological perspective. And the punchline here is the following. Whoever led in the previous market never transitioned to the next one. 77 years, these transitions occurred, and every time the transition occurred, whoever was the market leader didn't make the transition. So you have to ask yourself, why? Why is that happening? In a rebooted world, is there a possibility that that's going to happen to us? And the answer is yes. It takes a whole different way of looking at it. Incumbents typically lose out to upstarts who are encumbered by the past. Now, I put that up there for a very simple reason. I think as I've learned a little bit about Israel over the last 36 hours, this is a real upstart community. I think you've got an incredible opportunity to really bring this country to a whole nother level. And I see it. I see the energy, I see the passion, and I see the amount of innovation that's taking place, right? But this is something to understand as you continue to build the company. So the old iceberg adage, 1/3 above water, 2/3 below. So as you start looking at success characteristics in this new environment, the traditional ones of product leadership or operational excellence, right, or customer service isn't enough anymore. There's a lot of things now that are below the waterline that you have to pay attention to that we never did, right? So relentless innovation, again, another opportunity that I think Israel has. There's an interesting book by Gary Hamel, and Gary points out a couple of things. He says, without relentless innovation, success is impossible. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. The second thing he says, innovation is the only sustainable strategy for creating long-term value. Very important point. And the third one, he says, innovation matters more than ever. In a world that's globally connected and so much technology superiority doesn't last very long before it's copied and duplicated. Right? If that's all you're doing and doing it once, you're not going to sustain. This sustainable innovation and continuous innovation is key. The second thing is culture of adaptability, or embracing change, which is my first principle when I talk about technoism. Right? This culture of change is very different. So who in this room likes change? Raise your hand. Not that many of you. I'm surprised, because all of you, I was going to figure that there were much many hands going up, and I'll tell you why. Here's how I define change. Change is great if you're in control and you're making the decisions, and it's horrible if you're being affected by change. And I think a lot of people in this room control change because you're running your own companies. But it's really, really tough. But let me kind of ask you a different question. If you had to change your life patterns to avoid death, do you think you could do it? Who thinks you can do it? If your life depends, this is a matter of life and death. A lot of you think, okay, that's good. I'm glad. I have faith in you. So let me ask you a question. After a heart attack, what % of patients conform to a healthy lifestyle after a heart attack? And that means eating right, exercising regularly, and stop smoking. What percentage? Anybody? Take a guess. 40? 95? Somebody said 20%. Who else? 10%. You have no faith in the human race, but that's okay. 60? All over the place. Well, actually, the right answer to this thing is 20%. So when your life depends on you changing, 1 in 5 change, or 4 out of 5 don't. Why is that? Lazy? Yeah, especially when your life depends on it, right? Let's be lazy about it. What happens is we lose the sense of urgency. 6 months later, we're feeling good. Why? Let me eat that hamburger. Let me not exercise. Let me go smoke my pack of cigarettes, and you get into all the bad habits. It becomes something foreign. And these are some of the things we need to deal with on a continuous basis. When is it the best time to change a culture or move a company? Is it when things are going well during a crisis, or when things are going well? When is it easier? Crisis. And why is that? Because if you have to, right? If you don't change. Now, what do you think is the percentages of companies that during a crisis actually can change and survive? Very low, right? The inverse of that is quite kind of an interesting one. Is when do you think a company is in the greatest danger? When things are going well, or when things are going bad? When going well, because now you have no sense of urgency. If you are on top of the world and you're closing and selling and everything is going well, why should you change? You say, I got to do this differently. Well, why? We're doing so well. So the secret here is, for many of you that have companies that are doing very well, how do you create some sort of, burning platform, not too big of a burning platform, but to keep people to be adaptable? And those are things that are very, very important. I thought Darwin got it right. It's not the strongest of species that survive nor the most intelligent, but those that are most adaptable to change. So my key for you in this particular thing is you have to make change part of your individual daily life, and you have to make also change part of your culture. You have to be adaptable if you're going to survive. And again, there's a lot of resources available. I've put a few books up there, but Cotter and Alexander over on the right are two of my favorite. So besides that, relentless innovation in this culture of adaptability, passion. Anything without passion doesn't really work. I look at Israel, and I look at all of you, and I can tell you, you have a lot of passion. Every time I go out there and somebody wants to talk to me, boy, I see the passion, right? And that's a good thing. It takes passion to be successful and to have longevity. And then there's a whole series of other things, right? You got to leverage technology. If you're not leveraging video, if you're not leveraging all the web resources that are out there and a lot of the tools and technologies that are available, you're at a major disadvantage. So make sure you're leveraging the things that are available today. You got to empower and value your employees. You got to harness assets across the company. You got to move nimble, right? You got to be very, very nimble in how you do it. You got to do things like reward creativity. We're not in a knowledge economy. We're in a creative economy now. Creativity is the new currency. So what are you doing inside your company to really stimulate and create creativity? Rewarding creativity. All of these things are really important. Experimenting constantly. If you're not experimenting on an ongoing basis in your company, and this is, if you hear Beth Comstock speak, or you hear me speak, we're kind of building cultures in these big companies that we're operating in many, many ways, trying to be like you folks are, more entrepreneurial, right? And it starts with experimentation, not only doing these gigantic projects. Simplification. The beauty of Apple and the genius of Apple is taking complexity out of the equation, right? You don't only have to be innovative on product, you have to be innovative on user interfaces, on how things are deployed, on models and everything else. If you do that, you have a better product and a better organization. You got to spend time imagining the future. And, questions like this I ask all the time. What happens to the world when video becomes pervasive? I was dealing with a financial account 2 weeks ago, and they're doing all of this strategy, and I just said, hey, strategy sounds good, but what is the impact to your plan if video is pervasive? How does that change your relationship with your clients? Should you be installing video to your high net worth clients today as a competitive advantage? How much is it going to cost you, and is that going to give you the gain? Right? It's having this little ability to just see a little bit out into the future. And there's a lot of other things, right? Virtual reality. I was in the Stanford lab, amazing technologies that are coming out there. And the power of VR for me is it changes behavior. Your body doesn't know the difference between reality and virtual reality. I walked across this rope bridge. My heart rate was 62 at the beginning. It was 158 at the end. I'm not a crazy person. I knew it was not real, but still the effect of doing in a virtual world had that physical impact on me. And virtual reality will be used for behavioral change, for people that have to change, that have habits that have to be modified. It's going to be done through VR, right? And that's a saw. I'm not going to do it. The other thing is interacting with technology, right? This is what an interactive technology was, virtual Valerie a while ago, the current technology. And eventually it's going to move where our communications with devices are not going to be perceived to be any different. There's actually some incredible technology in the gaming world. This is a gaming company called LA Noire that created a game. And as you can see, they're doing real-time, avatar creation, right? And the key with all of this stuff is that you can actually see the details of the facial expressions. And when you can see that, it's all around the body language. And this is what they're doing in the game. Well, think of a world in where we have a camera with a processor on that we're creating these avatars on the fly. What does that do from a bandwidth perspective? It changes it exponentially because once I send your avatar, you have to send very little information, right? And then from there, I can morph. I can do all sorts of really mind-blowing stuff. The whole world of what's happening
your brain signal right
with Georgia Tech. These are neural interfaces. I'm sorry, there's so much noise there. But I'm actually controlling a dolphin on that computer, right, through thought. They have a cap on me, and they've taught me, here's a couple of brain waves to do. And think of the power of that. That's how, in the future, will be the interfaces. It won't only be gestural-based or voice-activated or artificial intelligence. It's going to be brain-activated, right, things that are in the works right now to do it. 3D printing, right? We've seen stuff where aircraft engines could be printed. We've seen things now in TED and stuff where they're actually thinking on the healthcare side to print the organs, whether it's esophagus, kidneys, hearts. In the future, they're doing that kind of stuff. So a lot of innovation. Gaming, incredible stuff on gamification. Gamification is going to hit the business world with tremendous power. It's going to change everything we do. Why does business have to be boring? You know, why can't it be fun? Right? Games are fun, and there's a lot of really interesting technology coming there. So all of these are really important things to consider. You got to think about which ones are the ones that you have, which are the ones that are missing, which are the ones that are critical for you to build into your company. And the last one I wanted to close on, and I'm almost done, is really talking about collaboration. And not only collaboration, but being an effective collaborator. I think Israel, in my humble opinion, again, in the short time that I spent here, there's a culture of collaboration. I think a lot of the stuff that, for historical reasons, I think you're natural collaborators in many, many ways, but I think there's opportunity to do some things a little bit differently. Now, to me, collaboration is the killer application. And, I always ask people, well, why should you do it? And there's all these crazy definitions. The only reason to collaborate is very, very simple, is to drive better results. It's the only singular reason is you want to drive better results when you collaborate. And after doing this for the last 3 or 4 years, Cisco spends a lot of time creating technologies to do this. And what I've discovered is technology is only one of the pillars to really drive collaboration in it. 2 minutes? Am I good? Okay. So, there's actually 3 things. Technology is the easy one. If you come to me and you say, I want technology collaboration kits and tools, I can prescribe it to you 30 days later, we install and you're done. But it's not that simple. You need to have a process. Why should you use it? Who should you use it? What should you use it for? And then the really hard one is you got to build a culture of collaboration inside your company. Every company that I talk to, where if they fail on collaboration, is because the culture doesn't allow it. So it's 3 things that you have to pay attention to. And the way I kind of look at it is if you're able to overcome them, what should you collaborate on? You should collaborate on things that make you more innovative. You should collaborate on things that improve your customer relationships or your customer selling. Or you should collaborate on things that make you more efficient. And you should be thinking about it through the left model and then saying, how do I leverage the crowdsourcing and collaborative capability that I have within my employee base? How do I bring my partners to help me do that? How do I bring my customers? And then how do I crowdsource around the world? Very simple model, but this chart I use on a pretty regular basis. And just one example I want to show you, which I think is one of the most interesting companies, is P&G and how collaborative they are as an organization. P&G, everything started with candles. And out of that candle, look at all the products that they have been able to build. They've been able to take expertise that exists inside the company in one department and be able to extract it and recombine it in ways where they have 12 product lines that are over $1 billion. Right? And that's a very powerful story. As a matter of fact, if you look at this white strips technology, which is a teeth whitening in the U.S., I don't even know if it's available here, but this is a multi-billion-dollar business, and they went after the dentist community, right, to whiten your teeth. And this product, the engineering of it is quite interesting. They combined knowledge from the fabric and home, which the bleach department. They combined it with their oral care that did the toothpaste division, and then they needed corporate R&D to create the film to adhere these types of things. And combined together, this is a $2 billion business for them. Now, culturally, it's very hard to be collaborative in this environment because they have to extract knowledge and people from existing organizations for periods of times that could be 6 months to 2 years. And how do you do that in a way that makes sense and that allows that individual to be able to come back to their jobs? There's a lot of cultural and process that goes behind it. But look, this is the power that is possible. When you do that, they have a culture of sharing. They have an inventory of expertise. How many of you have a true inventory of all the expertise and assets that you have within your company? I know we don't. We try. We're a very big company, but this is something you need to work on. And again, it gives you a very big competitive advantage. I want to close on something here, and if you can put the music up just a little bit on it. So these are starling birds, and I don't know how familiar you are with starlings. Starlings are about this big. And they're not very powerful, and there's a lot of them. And this is somewhere in the English countryside, and what you're going to see is 500,000 of them flying together. and flying together in a very unified pattern. Now, a couple things happen. You're going to see some hawks that are going to try to come in and take them. And what ends up happening is, because there's so many of them and they're so coordinated and they're so collaborative, the hawk can't take them. The hawk comes into the group, they surround the hawk flies out. Where if they were flying independently, right, it would make a big difference. Now, the reason I put this video up here, and I really thought about it, I started thinking about, what have I seen over the last 36 hours here, right? What is your opportunity? I see a lot of people with a lot of dreams. I see a lot of people with big hearts. I see people that want to create something tremendous. And I see some challenges. I see the challenges of your market is always outside of Israel. It's not like you're building something and selling it in here. Everything is, how do I get to a different place, right? And you're relying. The Dealmakers Summit that's here, what's it doing? It's bringing people like us in here to see the wonderful things that are going on in Israel, and again, the beautiful culture that you're all about. But I challenge you, because I think the greatest thing that could happen here is not someone like Cisco or GE or anyone coming in and buying your companies. And I know that's a wonderful thing in the short term. But building things here that are for the long run, right? Building companies like this collectively together that actually change your country, change the position that you're in, and in the long run, right, make Israel a much bigger power in this whole world. And I challenge you to think about this. How can you all work together more than you are to? And it's going to push your cultures. It's going to push your companies. It's going to push everything that you've thought about. But I think if you really stopped and you thought about it and said, I'm doing this not for me, and I'm not doing this for my company, but I'm doing this for my country, right? And together, if you really lined up, I think you can really change the world. Thank you so much for your time.